Dagot si Angela Noah Gonze. The Shibiko Arizona Gatna Shaw, Dini Gadi, Eugene Oregon Gunschleet, Zithlagais An and Dan Schleet. Hello everyone, my name is Angela Noah and I am White Mountain Apache, which is located on the Fort Apache Indian Reservation in Arizona. I am also Choctaw Nation from Oklahoma, and I'm excited for today's episode. This is a continuation of my research here at the University of Oregon, where I am exploring the intersection of relationality and storytelling as an Indigenous research methodology. I'd like to welcome you all back to the Young Elders podcast. Today, we are bridging generations through storytelling, history, and community conversations. As your host, I'm truly excited about today's episode. This is tied into my final project for a course on Black feminism's jurisprudence. We'll be exploring the intersections of education, legal theory, and community-driven change with two powerful powerhouse educators who have dedicated their lives to transforming curriculum and advocating for educational sovereignty. So I'm so excited because today joining me are Rena and Leah Dunbar. They are sisters, educators, and lifelong advocates for ethnic studies. Rena is the coordinator for the subsequent Grow Your Own Future Teachers program at the University of Oregon. And Leah has worked extensively in ethnic studies, education, and curriculum development. Together, they have played a pivotal role in implementing ethnic studies certification for schools in Lane County, working to ensure that students receive an education that reflects the diverse histories and experiences of their communities. Before we dive into our conversation, I'd love to open the space for you both to introduce yourselves in whatever feels right for you. Could you please share a little bit about your backgrounds and what brought you to do this work?
Okay. Yay. Hi, Angela. Thank you for hosting us on your podcast. I think ever since I heard of Young Elders, I'm just like, oh, it's the coolest thing ever. Just as I think people who have devoted themselves to youngers,
Mhm.
uh, Leah and I, at least, I think that's kind of how we see ourselves. Uh, Professionally is people who just young love the youth, and so I think I would start with that. I'm Rena, and so I think that it's really cool for you to have twins on your show, and hopefully during this you can start to figure out whose voice is whose. But I was born first. We're at the age now where I want to say we're the same age. Uh, but I am 9 minutes older than Leah. Uh, let's see, we're identical. We're also mirror twins, which is really interesting. We are Black, biracial,
Humans.
yeah, yeah. I know I was going to say, well, women, but thank you. Humans, I think first. Daughters, mothers, um,
And sisters.
sisters, people, plant lovers, animal lovers, teachers, um, at some point in there too. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm Leah. Hi, Angela, and all the young elders out there. Um, I'll I'll just share a little bit about what brought us to this work of being educators and particularly as ethnic studies educators. And I know Rena will hopefully chime in because
That's how
we're,
we do.
yeah, and we're 52, so I'm going to leave a lot of stuff out. But our identities have been really central to how we moved into education and chose to show up
Mhm.
as Black biracial beings. And a part of that is navigating through systems that really did encourage assimilation.
Mhm.
And, of course, participating in that assimilation at times and then ultimately recognizing that assimilation is not the way to get free.
Mm-hmm.
And that, as much as we tried to assimilate, we would never be successful
Yeah.
at assimilation, which I think is a journey that most young people of color navigate in school systems and in, and even, be it in their peer groups or, if they are in systems that don't reflect their identity either in, who's in front of the room or who is in the curriculum or the values that are prioritized in that system. And so, our parents were educators.
Mhm.
And I think that, really thinking critically about the ways that we are advantaged
Mm-hmm.
through education, and then also the ways that education can be oppressive and, um, a mechanism of erasure.
Yeah.
That really has is, I think, a lot of what brought us into our awareness of our understanding of ourselves as ethnic studies practitioners, and that was a very long journey.
Yeah, I'm gonna just
Back
pop.
to Rena. Back to
Well, I
Rena.
just wanted to pop back in there. Yeah, about how Leah was talking about our parents, and so our mom, who she passed away almost 8 years ago now, which is kind of wild. But she was a special education teacher our whole entire life,
Mm-hmm.
and back like in the 60s before special education was actually even like a thing that really happened in public school. And she, being the powerful Aries mama she was, she got our dad into teaching. And so our dad was teaching, I want to say math and economics. He was an economics major.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in like 66 or something, 1966. And the somehow in the district, folks found out that they were dating. And at that time, that was a big no-no. And so they didn't have their teaching licenses renewed.
I
Mm-hmm.
like how you called that a no-no, by the way.
It was a no-no.
It was against the law.
Yeah, okay, that was against the law. And so actually, like from the get-go, like they were kind of pushed out of education. And dad didn't necessarily go back in, but
Yeah.
being a black man,
Mm-hmm.
like a really big narrative, at least for us, is, you get your education. You
Yes.
get, that is our way to economic uh,
Mm-hmm.
security. I'm not going to say freedom, um, security. And, so that's a very big narrative in the Black community
Mm-hmm.
is, education is access.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really drilled down into us. And then at a certain point, obviously we became teachers. And I think still believe that narrative
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. And then, but we started to kind of witness what was happening for students and how students were seen as like what was seen as a good student, what was seen as a bad student, and then once you start seeing the layers of like who gets to have access, who doesn't, who's
What
seen
is rewarded,
who's
what
seen as
isn't.
good, the whole grading system.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether it was because Leah and I had the mirror of each other. Like, because we were like really reflecting every single day at the end of school as teachers with each other,
Yeah.
with our mother, who came out to Eugene to be with us. And she was also teaching too.
Mhm.
And so we just had this really critical lens
Mm-hmm.
of who was seen as valuable, who was seen as a learner, what types of learning was, seen as important. And so it just made us kind of, I don't know, into ethnic studies teachers, but we didn't have the word
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
for ethnic studies for maybe the first 10 years of our teaching, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you. And I mean, I feel like I'm kind of rambling, but my first job title was I was hired at a high school, a local high school, to what was called at-risk students.
Mm-hmm.
And and to try to keep them from dropping out. Like these students have been labeled in their 8th grade year
Uh-huh.
as the students most likely to drop out by
Mhm.
the end of their freshman year.
Mhm.
And I was hired as the new teacher to come in and try to keep them from dropping out, right? So here's the maybe the hardest quote unquote students given to the newest teacher, which actually happens all the time,
Hmm.
still to this day. And I started to see, like, wait a second, these kids are actually just the poorest kids in the
Mhm.
school. These
Mhm.
kids are the brownest kids in this school. These kids are the most revolutionary,
Resistant.
resistant
Resistant.
kids in the school. And once I started to like see that,
Mhm.
I was like, oh, okay. And I think that's where I started to become like kind of a critical pedagogist.
Pedagogue.
Pedagogue?
Pedagogue.
I'm like,
I
what's
don't know.
pedagogues? Yeah, there we go. That sounds weird. But like really starting to like, see I started to identify with my students and like, okay, well, we're all in this system. And by the way, at the school where I was at as the youngest teacher, I was the only Black/brown teacher at the school. And the
Mhm.
other teachers were kind of rude to me. And
Mhm.
they actually were mean to these kids and then they were
Mhm.
mean to me. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, we're on a journey together. And
Yeah.
once I started to see myself as on the journey with students,
Hmm.
um, I don't know, it's just shifted what I thought of teaching, you know.
And I think what you're trying to say, this is Leah again, um, is your role as
Mhm.
a teacher, your understanding of your role as a teacher also shifted.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I know that we're going to get to kind of educational sovereignty here. But what I think about is like really exploring what it means to be in solidarity with
Mhm.
students. And, because one of like the fundamental like or foundational tenets of ethnic studies is around, being in solidarity with one another and
Mhm.
particularly in marginalized or minoritized communities.
Mhm.
That orientation as an educator is it distinguishes you from an educator who is working within the system to, replicate the system, right? Like, to replicate the outcomes, right? Some students win, some students lose, right? Like that's the grading system. And
Mhm.
we're okay with that, right? Like there's students who get A's and there's students who get F's. And
Mhm.
that really mirrors what we see in society, right, under capitalism.
Mhm.
And um, the only way, and this is again I mean, I'm not coming up with this on my own, but it is my belief that has
Mhm.
been shaped by the beliefs of others, is the only way that we shift a system towards a more liberatory framework, just like
Mhm.
in society, like we have to really think about what is our objective,
Mhm.
right? Are we going to leave students behind in our classrooms?
Mhm.
How do we cultivate solidarity between students and so that they understand who one another are and why we matter to each other,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and why it's not okay if somebody in our classroom community isn't succeeding.
Mhm.
How do we take on collective responsibility for one another,
Mhm.
so that we are creating classroom communities where everybody is seen and everybody is successful.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah.
Um, and I know you have another question, probably, Angela, that it just makes me think about, like that myth of individualism. I
Mhm.
think that's really what Leah's highlighting. And as Black people, and I am going to guess maybe as Native folk, tribal folk, like we don't see ourselves as individuals, and we're not often seen as individuals, right?
Mhm.
we're so
Yeah.
we just didn't get to have like an individual sense of whatever, and we're a group.
Mhm.
And so like, we take that, I don't know, we take that philosophy into the classroom, and it's a community philosophy, it's a collective philosophy, and I think that really shifts how you look at school.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I think, ethnic studies as a genre,
Mhm.
right? It's really about communities,
Mhm.
right? And collectives. And yeah, and so it's been kind of interesting. I think probably being twins, Leah and I also never identified as an individual. We just didn't get to.
Mhm.
We have a twin pronoun, we are a twee. And so we navigated the world very much not as non-individuals. And so it's just not the way that we see the world. And I think that it also informed, like, I was in some classroom across town and Leah was at another high school across town. And what we ended up doing, which actually is one of the things I think that we're most proud of,
Hmm.
is we hosted a youth open mic for 10 years
Mhm.
at a local coffee shop.
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
And we brought kids together from across our schools, and then it really just spread with word of mouth from the students, of course, because
Young
kids.
people, they
And
want to be together.
yeah, and that is really, I think, one of the most empowering things that we did as teachers.
Mhm.
Um, and this is before actually doing the ethnic studies, like official um, stuff that we ended up doing eventually. But
Mhm.
we hosted this open mic and just like made space for youth voice and,
And community building, really,
yeah,
through art
Mhm.
and hip hop,
and hip hop. Wait,
which is another resistance, narrative
Mhm.
that gives voice,
mhm,
right, to communities of color historically, and of course in the present.
yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for giving me the rundown. The first thing that I was excited to hear, Rena, that you said is be a witness, which speaks to just, I think, like being empathetic. If you see students that are feeling unsafe in their classrooms, you as a teacher, what can you do about that? And that was a theme from our Black jurisprudence class is just have empathy, handle people who come into your presence with care and yeah, be a witness. And I love that you saw some things that you didn't agree with and you both wanted to change that. And I can personally say that with Subsequently, the Native Teach graduate teach program that I work at, I have the amazing honor of working under Rena and that whole mentorship. Um, Anytime I step into the office, I just feel like, yeah, I belong here. I'm meant to be a student and I will graduate. And there was a time when I did not feel that. There was a time I was ready to stop at college. But I definitely owe even just the hugs, Leah, that you'll give me in community, how much you just, y'all really do handle folks with care. And that goes a long way for students, especially if we're far from home.
Yeah,
Another
yeah,
thing that I resonate that y'all said is getting your education and seeing that as a economic security and access. The elders and my grandma, they would say like your education is the one thing that they can't take away from you. And I always felt that there was power in that, like knowledge is power.
yes,
Um, the way that was phrased, unfortunately, was, get off the res, go get your education and then come back. But that first part, get off the res, the fact that I'll have to miss out on ceremony.
mm,
And now that I'm almost done here at school, I feel like my community doesn't know me. They don't know that I have the credentials to come and help now. I have to rebuild those relations. I missed out on a lot. And
mm,
sometimes I wish that I could get those credentials there, that, I can just stay, I don't have to leave and not be a part of my community because I feel like that's where I would thrive. That's where my people is. That's
yep,
why I am here. So I really appreciate that you all had said that. Black jurisprudence just talks about how essentially law is made up and that it
Mhm.
reflects a set of values, but whose values are prioritized
Right.
in that system? What stories are being told? Who's telling them? Which ones are not? And so I think that the way I came upon this work too was I was participating in that assimilation, and then I realized that there was a lot of harm, and I didn't feel comfortable in my body. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that we all kind of stumble upon that of like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't this isn't who I am, this isn't my value. So there were a lot of things that jumped out to me that I appreciate y'all talking about. And I'm going to jump to our first question on law, education, and resistance. So, the work that you both do in education ties directly into some of the themes, as I've mentioned, for my Black feminist jurisprudence, particularly the ways in which law and education shape access, power, and justice. And just to give a little context for listeners who may not be familiar, jurisprudence refers to the philosophy of law, so how laws are interpreted and applied. And Black feminist jurisprudence examines how legal systems intersect with race, gender, and power structures. So like educational systems. So a lot of your work, I think, aligns with that. And I love that you called yourself a pedagogue. But I think that idea is deeply connected to the idea of pedagogy, which simply means the method and practice of teaching. And I've learned that pedagogy is rooted in Black and Indigenous traditions, often go beyond the classroom. So, like the storytelling mic night, and um,
Mm.
what I refer to that for me is the Longhouse Culture Nights that we have on our campus. I haven't ever sat down and, shared food, ate Indian tacos with my professor. I do that only with my native professors because they show up at those culture nights. I've never gotten that experience with my other professors. So I think that's very telling. That's just how we build knowledge and how we check in on our community to make sure that, we're taking care of each other because it's a hard thing to go through a system like higher ed. So this question talks about law, education, and resistance. And one of the texts that we read was from Audre Lorde, who famously said, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house." And I remember, Rena, you and I sometimes referring to this text. And I want to ask you both, how in your work have you seen this play out in the legal and educational systems you work within?
Wow.
Mhm.
That's a big question. I don't know. Do you want to start? I had started last time and then it went on forever. But I'll let Leah start.
Okay. Well, I think about, I mean, before I did my master's in teaching, I did a
Mhm,
master's degree at the University of Essex in women's writing, which was very feminist, feminist, like is rooted in like white feminism, actually, I would say.
mhm,
Um,
Let's go figure.
but the work that I did in my own like dissertation that I wrote for that degree was on Black feminisms and what I considered mestiza
Mhm.
identities.
mhm,
And so I really have thought a lot about this quote from Audre Lorde and um, in the navigating of systems as a like a professional teacher
mhm,
um, who dragged Rena along with me as we sought our doctorate in education.
mhm,
I think about, the system of education. I mean, we're talking about a master's degree. Like, let's think about the language of that for a minute,
Master.
for a minute,
mhm,
and also, like the ivory tower. Rena and I had many conversations about why, of course, it's called the ivory tower when you go into, um, you know, postgraduate work, whatever, because, it really is about reinforcing the system of hierarchy
Mhm.
and the knowledges that, prioritize, um, written work on the page, ideas that, you build on that have to be cited, like just the way, the extractiveness of that system,
Mhm.
like that is the master's house, right? And we're learning in higher education how to navigate and use those tools.
Mm.
Um, Literally.
Mhm.
However, I think what Rena and I have experienced post navigating, the master's house is that, that there are liberatory spaces, there are rooms
Mhm.
there where we are with our people.
Mhm.
And I mean, this is a great example, right? The conversation that we're having with you.
Mhm.
But also, and also, there is a certain amount of access to 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 altering structures,
Mhm.
right? I mean, using those tools,
Mhm.
and getting involved in policy making work or policy change,
Mhm.
thinking intentionally and being able to enact on the intention of moving resources to people and communities who have been marginalized, right, and excluded from having access, and so um, yes, I have seen folks who have been made sick and swallowed up by, um, using the master's tools and have become, you know, how they say, not all skin folk is kinfolk.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. And I have experienced that, lateral oppression
Mhm.
from people that I expected to be in, collaboration, solidarity,
Solidarity.
and co-conspiratorism.
Mhm.
Doesn't make that up. With, and that's very, that's when that happens, it's very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And
Almost more
yeah,
heartbreaking in a
yeah.
way, you know?
But also, I do think that there are spaces of resistance,
Yep.
and I think that we can use our knowledges
Mhm.
and our the the positions that we hold, in ways that are powerful and
Mhm.
center the values that are important to us. And I think a great example of that, and I hope that this continues to be true, is our director of education in Oregon,
Mm.
Dr. Charlene Williams.
Mm.
And, she is a brilliant Black woman who is leading a system, and is calling for educational justice,
Mhm.
to be experienced, by all of the students in that system. And, I hope that the system doesn't eat her, you know.
Right. And it's like, and how what is our role as
Mhm.
people who are navigating those systems, right? To stand next to her
Exactly.
when it attempts to,
Yes.
and we stand next to each other when
Yep.
it's attempted to
Yep.
eat, one of us,
Yep.
for sure. And we wouldn't be our friends sometimes call us the doctor's Dunbar, so I am going to drop that because we had to work hard to get that with our names right. And
Mhm.
and how do we use that to stand in solidarity with and pull other people up with us, right? Like
Yes.
what our role is. And I see it happen all the time too. And like Sapsaquatla, I'm so glad you mentioned that, Dr. Jacob, Dr. Sapsalian, Dr. Muniz, like how they use their positionality to elevate tribal communities. And, it's just really a profound teaching to me of
Mhm.
how to do that. And then how do we do this outside of the university?
Mhm.
And all this, and Leah and I still get to go and play in schools, which is really, really, really awesome.
Yeah.
And how do we model that for, our youth and the people who are coming up right, right behind us,
Mhm.
and seeing us in that lineage and that legacy. Um, so that's what we try to do. And it's a dance,
Hmm.
right? It's just a dance
Mhm.
that we're trying to do with some kind of,
Hmm.
rootedness
Yeah.
and authenticity.
I want to add one last thing, Angela, to that question, which is, how have you seen this play out? And, I think that when you are out of alignment with your community, they're going to let you know.
Mhm.
And that I think is a very important um, understanding to hold on to
Mhm.
is, be aware of who you are in relationship with
Mhm.
and really invite, in our case, it really is the sisterhood. We have some beautiful brothers in our life also, like in that, educational, in our professional realm
Mhm.
that I think, just those relationships are really important to make sure that you don't become, the master,
Mhm.
right? The man.
Be the man. We don't want to be the man. I don't know if we answered your question.
Yeah, I would say you definitely did. I really appreciate the perspective of how maybe some of these tools can help get us there, and that yes, it is a dance. I've heard the term like walking into different worlds from Indigenous
Yes.
students of that there's a colonial one and there's one where we have responsibilities to maintain our culture to ensure that these stories and traditions are passed on to the next one. And something that excites me about I wanted to make sure that wasn't wasting my time or doing that dance here at school. And so I started to get really serious about my education. And one of those steps was accepting the job, even as just as an office assistant, being at Subsequently being surrounded by what I would consider the closest thing as a BIPOC research center. And it's all powerful, like Black and Native women who are working in that office. And that was the first time for me I started to see my values reflected back here at the university. Um, and I would love to go and pursue law school, but it wasn't until this Black jurisprudence feminisms course that I was like, oh, okay, like that does seem attainable for me. And I don't know, something clicked of law itself can be storytelling. And I think of she's Cherokee, a tribal attorney, Mary Catherine Nagel, who says, a good lawyer knows how to tell good stories. And just so Mary Catherine Nagel's much of her work is she's an Indigenous playwright, but in her plays, she'll talk about, true, accurate narratives. And one of the plays that we talked about was from Suzanne Laurie Parks, who The Venus we had talked about as well. And Marta Lou Clifford and Theresa May, they taught me that, theater can be a way of telling our stories, make up the gaps in those educational systems that are leaving the true, narratives out. Because I've always just encountered so much romanticization and just exotification over Black and brown bodies, and the way that theater can be a way of telling stories, but maybe even law school as well, tell those stories in the courtroom. Those were the things that I thought about. And thank you so much for just sharing that as well. I'm going to jump to the next question that talks about reimagining education and sovereignty. So one of the texts we talked about was from M. Jackie Alexander's Pedagogies of Crossing that emphasizes decolonial and spiritual approaches to learning.
Yeah.
And my question for you both is, how do you incorporate culturally rooted teaching methodologies into ethnic studies and need native teacher training?
I love that question. Oh, and I just love that idea of lawyers, telling stories. So thank you for that.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think that what Leah and I both tried to do as classroom teachers was to create a space where our stories were welcomed and honored and when I say our, like everyone's stories, not just uh, the white quote unquote canon,
Mhm.
whoever was, I don't know, like Mark Twain or somebody like that, not just people like that, but like everyone's stories is welcome, and especially our own, and especially our students.
Mhm.
And I really like this. I haven't read the Pedagogies of Crossing, but I want to now. But I like really think about um, how do you create a space inside of an institution, but
Mhm.
create a space where everyone is seen as their most sacred self.
Mhm.
And like I really like, and Leah did this too, I know, like we'll wake up at 4 and 5 in the morning
Mhm.
and pray, first, and pray for, like to be able to hold a sacred space in a place that hasn't done that, for people like us and for students like the students that we have.
Mhm.
And so like really trying to get very centered in that way.
Mhm.
And so that students felt when they walked in through the door and in like, oh man, you should have seen Leah's classroom. But like I like how do you create a classroom where
Mhm.
students, when they walk through the door, they know it's a sacred space and they
Mhm.
know that they are sacred beings.
Mhm.
And when we create rituals
Yeah.
around that, so that storytelling and their stories were there were protocols so that they could be heard and elevated and honored. And and you're teaching kids how to listen to other kids, right? Because that may not be happening
Mhm.
in other classrooms and at home or whatever. So so we did that. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do that. And so I feel like I don't know like what culture, because Leah and I, we come from a diasporic, like
Mhm.
kind of disconnected
Mhm.
um culture in some ways. But also really trying to intentionally reconnect and honor our own spirits and our own needs and our own sacredness in school.
Mhm.
So and I really see, yeah, ethnic studies as a way to do that.
Mhm.
Um, and then um, and because we grew up in Indiana and because we grew up in a white supremacist system, um, you know, missing a lot. And a lot of what we miss as ethnic studies educators is Native studies. We
Mhm.
didn't have that. I'll be really honest with you.
Mhm.
Like, really trying to like figure out how to include indigeneity and without really knowing how.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so I feel really blessed
Mhm.
that I got to, form some relationships with some really powerful Native um, scholars,
Mhm.
but friends first.
Yeah.
And then, but then also, just trying to like be open to the learning and honest about the erasure that
Mhm.
has happened in our own education.
Mhm.
And so making space for that. But I think that if you make space in your classrooms for
Mhm.
student stories, a lot of that can come in.
Mhm.
And so when I think about culturally rooted teaching methodologies and like what's kind of guided at least the work that I get to do now with Native high school and college students and up, is that, just trying to create a curriculum where it's like, what's your story? What's
Mhm.
your culture?
Yeah.
What do you, that you think is appropriate to share,
Right.
right? Um, and how do we, hold that space and listen to each other? So, I mean, what's cool is that, thanks to those Native scholars, those
Mhm.
badass women and non women that have worked so hard in this state to elevate tribal um, curriculum, tribal,
Hmm.
coming from the tribes, to guide us
Hmm.
in how to do that work or how to learn in ways that are culturally respectful,
Mm-hmm.
um, and honoring of what the tribes think is important for us to know. And so, um, Dr. Angie Morrill, she said, Indigenous education, I'm going to misquote her, or tribal education is having a moment,
Hmm.
is what she says. And I just feel very humbled, and I know Leah does too.
Hmm.
We get to be a part of this moment
Hmm.
and learn from our native teachers.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Like, what a blessing.
Yeah.
I resonate just the praying early in the morning. I remember my mom, she would wake us up at 4 a.m. and I would be like so upset with her, like, why are you doing this? I'm sleeping and I'm gonna be cranky now. But she would say, like, you can go back to sleep after, just come outside with me. And so
Oh,
it would be right before this, the sun wasn't up. And that's a teaching too of you beat the sun before you start your day is how Apache ways were back then. And so she would try and instill in that in us. And we would pray with an eagle feather. And um, that is something that I've carried with me too. I would, just try and start the day in prayer. And starting this podcast, I really got so excited about, oh, could I be a storyteller too? I know that that's a traditional role back home, and how can that align with research? And I think of Sean Wilson, he wrote the book Research is Ceremony. And sometimes when I'm studying, I'll start to feel, tired and I'll maybe just things have been happening that are clouding my mind and I'm not really feeling good about that moment, but I'll stumble upon something that just speaks to me from an Indigenous researcher, and it just kind of reorients me of why this work is important. And my mentors have said like those are your ancestors calling you in. That's your ancestors, directing you. And it feels, if I were to explain this to someone else, they would think that'd be like so taboo. And I'm really tired of the spirit not being a part of our research or feeling disconnected in that way. So I really love that you talked about how y'all's spirits are in this work too. And this is one of the reasons why I switched to be a Native Studies major at the university. Being, brought into being taught by Indigenous professors, and all of the NAES, courses are housed under ethnic studies. So that's been a space for me where I finally am starting to feel connected again as an Apache student, and that, oh, I can produce research that is meaningful, that they talk a lot about that, how it's reciprocal. And so I've learned how to tell the stories, but also be guarded of that. I can sense these feelings of hesitancy from
Yeah.
Indigenous storytellers of, oh, not too much access now, or
Right.
this story has been, retold in different ways and I didn't get credited for it, or you
Mhm.
only tell stories in the winter. Don't be telling stories outside the season. There's so many protocols that go with it, but um,
Mhm.
I want to be respectful of those. And it's, I don't know, just research has been a eye-opening journey of, there's so much individualism in it, but I really hope that I can just keep carrying, all of that good work that's come before me, and even branch out to not just Indigenous folks, but what other BIPOC researchers are out there too, who's continuing work that that's helping us call our spirits back to us, into our
Yes.
communities, and into this work. Leah, did you have something to add, or if not, I was going to jump down to the next question.
Um, I want to, I guess, just really briefly, I just want to say that, in addition to, kind of that reclaiming the classroom as a space for spirit and for, articulating like our identities and ways of knowing
Mhm.
as Black and Brown people. That also, when I think about that question that you asked around culturally rooted teaching methodologies into ethnic studies, that we get to guide that work for white European American students as well, to really think about, what story, like to go back to your storytelling idea, like what stories are yours and why don't you know them?
Mhm.
And how has colonialism, separated all of us
Mhm.
from our ancestors' identities, their indigenous homelands and ways of knowing. And so there's a repair
Mhm.
that ethnic studies offers all students in the classroom. That I 100% disagree with anyone who would characterize ethnic studies as something that makes white students feel guilty,
Mhm.
excuse me, about who they are. I would 100% characterize it as a space where s- young people who have been socialized as white have
Mhm.
an opportunity to reclaim their 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 spirits,
Mhm.
right? In a way that is rehumanizing.
Mhm.
And I think that most ethnic studies, like scholars, would agree with that definition.
Mhm.
Um, so that's the only thing I wanted to add to what Rena said so beautifully.
Um, Before on the note of storytelling, I'm going to ask about if you can share a story about or on your personal journey. But I wanted to mention really quickly that Rena and I work at Subsequently, and one of the coolest things I saw coming from that office was the push for tribal history and shared history curriculum, getting teachers ready to teach that. And I know that there is a bill now for those stories to be told, and it's really necessary to see just the legal input. That's a way of
Yeah.
uh, legal work to be implemented in the classrooms that open space for those stories to be told. And on that note of storytelling, can either of you share a story about a moment in your teaching or advocacy work that affirmed why you do what you do? Maybe was there like a particular student, lesson, or experience that reinforced your commitment to this work?
Gosh, that's a hard question. There's so many stories,
Yeah.
right? Because like this time, Leah and I have met and come across so many students,
Mm.
and we're old. Um,
You're
you
young
know,
elders.
but I mean, gosh, I mean, I don't know. Like, I sometimes even think about like we moved here from somewhere else, and so our experience of being Black is so different from students who grow up here.
Mhm.
And I will just say like one of the reasons why Leah and I started our class, our ethnic studies class, was called Courageous Conversations, and we did borrow that term from Glenn
Singleton.
Singleton.
Uh-huh.
Um, but we had students who were Black here that were calling themselves colored, and like just where we grew up with, that just didn't seem like no, that just wasn't what we called ourselves. And so we're like, okay, like we need to be having some conversations with our Black and brown students here, that is different than what they're getting from like their white educators growing up here in Eugene, Oregon.
Or their peers.
Or their peers,
Right.
right? Their white peers.
Mhm.
So, I just think about that, and on, like I mean, this is kind of a negative story, but I was teaching an ethnic studies class in middle school, and I ran into a parent one time, and they were like, "Oh, my daughter is blah blah blah," and I was like, "Oh, your daughter," and this is a white lady, and I was like, "Oh, your daughter's this beautiful Black girl, blah blah blah," and she's like, "She's not Black, she's African,"
Mhm.
and she was adopted
Mhm.
young woman. And I was like, wow, this is a white mama who adopted a Black African child and obviously sees Black as a negative term.
Mhm.
And you're raising this beautiful,
Black
beautiful
child.
Black child. And
Mhm.
so, I was just like, okay, so in some ways, like, I was like, all right, I'm going to be that counter narrative
Mhm.
for these Black students who are having this experience where they're feeling ashamed of who they are. And countering that. And so that's just like a little negative story of just like why I felt like it was important for us to have an ethnic studies space in middle school. Um, I don't know if Leah has a another story of like a student or teaching or advocacy work. We have so many.
Yeah, I want to say two things about that. One is that Rena and I were very fortunate to be mentored as student teachers. I became a teacher 2 years after Rena, after moving to Eugene from the UK. And Rena's mentor teacher, Diana Granberry, was this giant in my eyes and Rena's, like in Eugene, in the Eugene educational cosmos, I guess I'll say. And she was close to retirement age, but she and her colleagues, Sally Lowe, who was a world literature teacher at South, Rena would eventually move into her position
Yeah.
when she retired. Misa Joe, who a lot of our community here hold very high as a Japanese American, but also indigenous um, educator and
Revolutionary.
revolutionary activist. And so we really, you know, um,
We were mentored
we're
well.
past the torch. Yeah, thank you. We were mentored well. We were past the torch from folks who really saw education as activism and as advocacy and as a spiritual practice and as, heart work. And so that is who, and of course there's our mother as well. And so like we had these beautiful elders supporting us as we were coming in as young people into education. And then I want to kind of just pull back just visualizing like the camera going backwards and just thinking about what has changed in the educational landscape since we became teachers in the late 90s. And here we are in Oregon, and we now, as of 2021, started the work in 2018. We now in Oregon have K through 12 ethnic studies state standards. We have, because of the work of amazing, community members, tribal community members, and educational, um, you know, um, policymakers who were indigenous, like Shandin Garcia. We have tribal history, shared history, which is legislated, native curriculum, one of the first in the country. I think Washington State was first, but we have seen over the course of our careers, the landscape has changed, and, it has been impacted by the interaction between individual teachers, community members, policymakers, and we now have our 2024 social science state standards that integrate all of those things, and so I mean, for me personally, like thinking about all of the different little pieces that have gone into systematizing ethnic studies in the state of Oregon
Tribal history, shared
is
history.
really beautiful.
Mhm.
And that renews my commitment to this work, and going outside of the classroom and outside of a district and thinking regionally and statewide about the impact of this work, as teachers become more racially literate and more fluent and have built relationship with their local tribes and with tribal members and tribal educators, like that to me, seeing that, it just brings me hope
Mhm.
which, even in this moment,
Yeah,
right, this historical moment, like I am so proud of the opportunity that we have in Oregon to lean on like mandated mandated standards, right? Like it's not even that we get to do this, like we're required to do
Mhm.
this work. And I think that that is the result of lots and lots and lots of very skillful, strategic,
brilliant.
brilliant,
Mhm.
um, Indigenous educators and
Mhm.
community members and their allies
Mhm.
Our
and
ancestors
our
pushing
ancestors.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate the call for ancestors because I feel that this is ancestral work, and I just want to feel good about the work that I'm leaving behind. Because I am coming to the end of my academic career at the university, and I
Now,
where to go from here. But the term that jumped out at me when y'all spoke about your work, and also I think that the Dr. Dunbar sisters have been instrumental in changing that educational landscape, or at least I can personally be a testimony to witnessing that y'all have been instrumental. And that I remember this one time when y'all came into the Longhouse, and there was just so much love, and we took this picture. But I always come back to that picture, and in my head, y'all are academic aunties. Aunties are ones who are willing to stick up for others. They're always on you too if you can be better and grow. And I just, I don't know, they make you feel safe. There's so much love. And so I'm sure that you all are academic aunties to a lot of folks out there. But I just, that's what I was thinking of when y'all were sharing your story. And I do have one last question for you. As sisters and lifelong collaborators, how has working together shaped your approach to education and activism? Are there ways that y'all push each other to grow?
Great question.
yes. And like, first of all, I just want to say, I love you,
Yes.
Angela.
Oh, I love
We
you both so
we
much.
love you, Angela.
Yeah.
And we just like, I don't know, we've always centered love and relationship. And I think that's been the secret to our success, quote unquote,
Hmm.
as educators is and I think maybe it's because of being sisters. And like I said before, we're mirror twins. I started out at the beginning with this, like we reflect each other. Um,
Hmm.
sometimes it's a beautiful reflection.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes it's like, come on, like
Uh-huh.
no.
Oh.
And and like Leah said, I've she's dragged me sometimes into certain places, and then we take turns doing
Yes,
that
we
with each
do.
other and encouraging each other. We were shocked
Mhm.
that we could not write our dissertation together.
Mhm.
Shocked. And really saw that as discrimination.
Yeah, we called it
Yeah.
a twinist.
Yeah. Because we are such collaborators, and
Yeah.
we really felt like our Courageous Conversations class
Mhm.
and our Ethnic Studies program was such a reflection of our collaboration.
Our values,
And
right?
that, yeah, like we really don't do anything without collaboration with each other or with other folks.
Mhm.
And like I there was a moment, like our mom passed away when we were in grad school, and I think actually now they say that happens to a lot of people. Is that like while you're a graduate student, you either have a parent or a beloved relative die, or you
Mhm.
get divorced or something, right? And so I had a moment where I just really wanted to give up, and I took a break, and I was like, Leah, I'm quitting, and I'm not doing this. And we have finished all our coursework, but we just had our dissertation to go. And Leah said, I'll wait for you. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, and she did. We took a year off. We took a break. We like did a little healing, and recovery from and some grieving, and then we got back to work, and we finished together. And so sometimes that pushing is just like being like, you're not doing this alone.
Yep.
Uh, You can take a break, but you got to come back and we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
And that's what we do for each other. And I hope that's what we do with our other, beloveds in our life.
Mhm.
Um, so we're just on a journey together.
Mhm. Um, okay, this is Leah again. I forgot that. You forgot that? I knew that we took 4 years instead of three. But I really appreciate Rena reminding me of that. Because yeah, I mean, I needed her. We need each other. And it's just I love that question, Angela, about I just think that you are giving us an opportunity to really acknowledge the role that we play in pushing each other to grow. And growth can sometimes be painful and uninvited.
Mhm.
And Rena just wrote down the word sistering, which I really love that she did that because it really is a verb.
Mhm.
And
I heard that from Adrienne Marie
yeah,
and
yeah,
Autumn Brown, the
yeah,
Brown sisters.
right. The Brown sisters. They're
Sistering as
such,
a verb,
yeah,
auntieing as
aunties.
a
Yeah,
right.
right. And I mean, really, like I even think about like, when we are in relationship with other people, we are pushing them to grow. And if we are wise, we are paying attention to the opportunities that other people are offering us to grow, whether it's welcome or unwelcome. What is the learning?
Mhm.
And so. Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it for 52 years. Hopefully, we'll be doing it for um, at least 30 more.
Was worried she was going to say 50 more. What about it?
Our dad's 93 right now. So, like, and he's amazing and he's definitely like with it. But, sometimes we think about living that long and if that's the most fun or not. And we want to be always having fun.
Yep.
So yeah, thank you, Angela, for that question.
Thank you.
Thank you for the honor of being your academic auntie. The beautiful thing about being a twin is I get to be in
Yep.
relationship with
Yep.
all of the people that she's in relationship with, and that really has been such an incredible and
Yep.
unexpected delight.
I was really excited when Rena suggested to bring you on too. I was like, yeah, of course. Like that just and I'm so excited that just like the podcast has been a manifestation and to see where it's gone. And this conversation, sitting down and hearing your stories has been really special. And that is like an energy exchange that is we see when you hear a story, like you're changed after that energy exchange. We hope that, you remember those stories. And it's such an honor to just get to know, like to have gotten to know y'all. And I get so excited every time I hear Rena mentioned in the office about how much work y'all have done, and you make it look so easy, and you give me so much hope and just encouragement in taking my place in my community that I can continue this kind of work and that it can be impactful in this way. Because I will forever say this more for like, I'll always say this to remind you that just your presence and in at school and in my life and in the community, I see how hard you both work. And just thank you for sharing about needing to step away from school because there's just like that I think that individualism and that colonial achievements like mindset of you need to go until you burn out. But I remember during the 2020 protests that and the pandemic, I was so burnt out, and it took me some grieving too. I was also dealing with, and I think I took a term off from school. And there's a lot of folks who got me to this point, and the Dunbar sisters are definitely have been influential in getting me to this point. So just thank you so much for your work and your heart to how that's so centered in this, and y'all really teach me how to handle folks with care, and especially myself. So just thank you so much for modeling that, and I'm really honored to just hear the story, and it's been just such a beautiful journey to learn who you both are. And I hope that this isn't the last time I'll have y'all on this podcast. I'm really excited about that youth open mic night that y'all did. I would love to see something like that in the
Oh,
community.
yeah.
Yeah, just more opportunities to be in community with each other. Um, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share? Advice for educators, reflection on your journey, or thoughts on where we can go from here?
Um, you know, I mean, it seems like right now it seems like pretty intense moment, and I just feel like, like the mantra of we are who we've been waiting for,
Mm,
and I don't know. I apologize, like who that comes through. Like I could say a tribe, I'm feeling a Hopi thing, but I could be wrong about that. But I really just like it reminds me, like I kind of wake up with that feeling every day now is we've been waiting for, and like we we've been fighting, our ancestors fought for us, like it's our turn now to fight for the future,
Hmm.
and that we get to do this work together. And so it seems hard, like even education seems like we're having a hard moment right now, but that it's always hard.
mhm,
And but if we have each other, we can keep doing it. And yeah, like this is what we were built for.
mm,
I'm going to add one more thing that Rena reminded me of, which is the words of Maya Angelou when she came to Eugene and spoke right after the second Iraq War.
mhm.
Rena and I have always been in the activist community. And we just had the opportunity to go listen to Maya Angelou, and she who is now a beloved ancestor for those listeners who don't know about her poetry
Mm,
writing and wisdom. But she said to the young people in the audience, she was just like, you are up to this. You are up to this moment. And I'll never forget that, and I just really think how powerful the youth are, always,
mhm,
from generation to generation. It's our young people who hold, I think, integrity in ways that are the most clear.
mhm.
And so that's just, I'm just going to leave it at that with my Angelou's words, you're up to this moment.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for all of that good work. And this conversation has been incredibly powerful, and I'm just so grateful that y'all were willing to come on and share your story. And thank you so much for your work in education and advocating for your students as well. This is what I would consider transformational education. And there's no doubt the impact that y'all have left on your students in your community. And I'm just so excited for the generations to come. So thank you for just being like that interruption of colonial ways, and bringing us back to the spirit and our roots too. Thank you to our listeners, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you so much to Dr. Dunbar, sisters Leah and Rena, for being here. And yeah, they're some powerhouses that I have the privilege and honor of working with, and I miss my aunties back home, but I want to let my aunties know that I'm taken care of out here. They do such a good job in pushing me in school, and I just hope that if you're a student in school, that you find your community like that too. I definitely wouldn't have made it this far without all of the knowledge and just the way that y'all continually and lovingly pull me in into this work. And I don't know, I'm so happy that I didn't give up on this podcast because I just get to have moments like this where I get to hear from just beautiful stories. And I've known y'all for almost a year now, but I learned so much just in this sitting too. So I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And as always, stay connected with us at the Young Elders Podcast. And let's keep the conversation going. I also want to give a special shout out to my Black Feminist Jurisprudence class. Thank you for inspiring these discussions and pushing the boundaries of what justice and education can look like. And that is it. Thank you, Rena, Leah.
Oh, we love you,
Yeah,
Angela.
I love you all.
We could talk to you forever. So
It was a
much.
lot of fun.
Thanks for inviting us. We are so honored.